All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Palantir Weekly. This is episode number 221. And I think it's just two of us today. We might have someone else join, but for the time being, it will be myself and Amir. And we're breaking down Palantir Q and earnings. Amir, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Fantastic quarter. Just finished publishing a 1-hour video where I just go through everything. So, I mean, it's a really good quarter. It's an amazing quarter, actually. I mean, it kind of hard to follow up Q4 that we had in terms of like hype. And we were just so shocked, everyone from Q4, that maybe now that Q1 hits, even though it's like a fantastic quarter, that some people are like kind of underwhelmed just given Q4. But no, I think Palantir is they killed it. They keep crushing. They keep dominating as they now change their X bio too. So I think company is doing fantastic. And as we saw in the stock quote, initial move down, recovered most of that. So I mean, been a good week overall.
Yeah, it has been a pretty exciting and volatile week. Obviously, you can see the stock right there. We were at basically 125. We gapped up to 130 very quickly after the initial results. And then we came all the way down, bottomed at around 106, 105. And slowly by slowly, kind of got back a lot of what we lost, not literally at those all-time highs, but I don't think anyone can be upset that it's almost at 120 after those earnings, which were good. They just weren't the numbers that I guess you needed when Palantir was trading at the valuation that it was trading at. And so regardless, not too bad in the stock performance. And we'll talk a lot more about the numbers themselves.
Yeah, I think people often seem to have a disconnect. Like they don't understand that like a quarter can be fantastic, but if more than that is already implied in the stock quote, the stock might still move down. And people are like, oh, what is happening? The stock is moving down, even though the quarter was fantastic. No, I mean, it's just what is expected in the price. So I think it was one of those things where the stock had just moved up a lot and had a lot of expectations inside the quote. But I'm surprised personally that it's actually moving back towards 125.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think any of us expected the stock to run up as aggressively as it did going into the print. So, wherever the stock ended up landing is whatever. But overall, it was an incredible quarter. So let's get into the numbers. I think we'll start off with just top line. What was your raw reaction before the earnings? We both thought they would get above that 40%. I think you thought it would get to 45. And I kind of agreed with you, given the expectations, given the quarterly beats that they've had. Didn't get that high, but still 39% year-over-year growth, 71% U.S. commercial, raised guidance, 55% U.S. revenue growth, 45% U.S. government. I mean, in general, when you saw these numbers, what kind of stood out to you from these initial metrics?
Initially, yeah, I think I said during the stream that I expected 48% and looked very crazy. Honestly, there's not a lot of millions to make that 48% happen. Like it actually could have been a real thing. Now, the problem is I based that off of the deals that we knew about. So we will throughout quarters hear about partnerships, deals, and stuff like that. So you try to extrapolate from that. Also the environment, like with the new Trump administration, reinvigorated focus on AI and stuff like that. So you try to make your best guess. The problem with a company like Palantir is that we don't really know, even though you might have signed like 150 deals in a quarter, we don't know when that revenue recognition is actually going to hit. So that's the guessing part. Like we don't actually know when revenue hits. So yes, I was way off with 48%, but that doesn't mean that a quarter itself was bad. I mean, 39% growth is still very strong, obviously. And also on an organic basis, they actually grew 44% year on year. So I mean, it is in that ballpark, but most importantly, it is accelerating and at a very fast pace, and that's the most important part.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the acceleration it's better than every other SaaS company in the United States, from my understanding, in the entire world. Like there's no other SaaS companies growing at 39% year over year that are pure play kind of AI names. So although valuation obviously is up there, the growth in and of itself, I think, was very impressive to everybody, regardless of where the stock was before we got these numbers.
Let me see. You guys want to see some charts? You've been missing the charts?
Let's do it.
We can do some revenue charts to kick it off. So here, maybe I can zoom in just on the chart part. Is this fine on stream, guys? Can you see?
That's pretty good.
Whoops. Okay, so obviously, you can see this huge gap up as of Q4, which is kind of like worrying when you see that, like, okay, we're really gapped up for Q4. Is that an outlier, or can they continue on top of that? And as we saw, that had another huge gap. So accelerating the pace of growth ever since the launch of AIP here, which is just fantastic to see as a shareholder. So 39%, but the part I mentioned is the organic growth actually grew 44%. So organic meaning we exclude the revenue basically from their SPACs. So when they invested in SPACs, in return the SPACs bought Palantir software at like 2 to 3 times the like usual price for Foundry. So that really boosted revenue numbers. But now that they're not investing in new SPACs, they kind of lost that, but it's still a drag on revenue. So if we exclude SPACs, Palantir's core business actually grew at 44%. But something that I have been tracking and been really worried about is international. So if we just look at US versus non-US, we can see that non-US is actually accelerating as well. It grew at 12%, so everything outside of the US, while the US grew 55%. So while US is scaling beautifully, this blue line here, it's scaling beautifully and just keeps going up. I don't know where this tops out, to be honest, because, I'll get into that in a second. But more importantly, we have international starting to accelerate now. Obviously, we know about NATO signing a deal in Q2, so that will be massive for this quarter. Well, again, we don't know when that revenue recognition will actually hit, but there's a lot of things happening. And from this growth that we had this quarter, if we look at how much came from existing customers versus new customers, 24% of the growth is actually just from existing customers scaling up within Palantir. So that's why it's always so important when we talk about during weeklies and wherever it might be, how important it is just to grow the customer base, because as long as you have the customer, you can start to scale them up and how much they use your products. So 24% just this quarter wasn't even like from them acquiring new ones. It's just existing customers using their services more and more. So those are kind of the highlights on the revenue part for me. Just seeing international accelerate, obviously, that's with a huge European drag. So once that European drag finally is gone, it's going to look fabulous. But yeah, international government accelerating, US just steaming ahead. I mean, when we look at net dollar retention, which is what we looked at here, 24%, like where does that top out? I mean, there's no end to how much you can scale AIP. So yeah, a lot of really, really exciting stuff for this quarter in terms of just looking at revenue in and of itself.
Yeah, I was really impressed, dude. I mean, this was just one of those quarters where you look back at it and you're like, they are not slowing down the growth. Commercial revenue, 71% in the US, government, 45%, government revenue overall, 45%, commercial revenue overall, 33%. The raising of guidance was very, very important. I still think they're sandbagging here, and I'm pretty sure, Amir, you probably feel the same. I mean, Karp did say back in 2022, he wanted to get the company to 4.5 billion of revenue by 2025. That would be a 30% CAGR over those 3 years. It would be a lot to ask to get us to 4.5, given they're guiding for 3.9. But I think we definitely get over 4. And within 2 quarters, we're probably going to be doing $1 billion a quarter, no matter what. So
yeah, just on that part, it was just so crazy because back in those days, he mentioned that after they actually removed their guidance, but they used to have, when they went public, they said, yeah, we're going to grow at 30% every year. And then that suddenly disappeared. So he was asked on CNBC, like, well, what happened to this 30% growth rate? I mean, it bottomed out at something like 13% year-on-year growth. And that's when we had the peak panic in like the stock. We were like in single digits. No one believed in Palantir. They're like, what is this black box? No one understands. It's not growing. It's not doing anything. So he went on and said, yeah, removed the 30%, but I'm still steering the company towards 4.5 billion in 2025. And what kind of genius would Alex Karp look like if they actually hit that? Me personally, their new guidance is actually what I'm expecting for the full year of 2025. So already in my forecasting for the actual valuation of the company, I'm like, okay, I'm missing something here, because if they're guiding for what I have them doing this year, then who knows what they're actually gonna do? And what's to say that they're not gonna keep raising guidance quarter over quarter, as well as they almost always do? So, I mean, it's just like he told us early on. You're like, we are dominating, but of course that doesn't always show up like on the quarterly results. So it's kind of difficult for investors to actually know what's happening on the inside. But I mean, he's been right so many times historically when he makes these statements. Like he's always right. He was right on LLMs. He was right on like geopolitical stuff. I mean, when Karp speaks, just listen, and it seems to always pan out the way that he forecasts. So yeah, 4.5 billion, it's definitely not impossible. It would be insane, but not impossible at all.
139 deals they closed, 5.4 billion in cash. Customer count, they are getting basically $900 million of revenue a quarter with less than 800 customers, which is just incredible. 769 year over year, it's up 40%. I mean, the only problem with this earnings has nothing to do with this earnings. It has to do with valuation, right? That's the kind of only issue that people are. Just to give people a sense of how crazy things are getting. Palantir is now one of the top 10 companies, top 10 tech companies in the world by market cap. So it is up there at exactly number 10, just underneath Oracle and just above Salesforce. It is number 37 in the entire world of market cap, just below T-Mobile and above Philip Morris, Samsung, Salesforce, etc. So here's a question, Amir. This point was brought up today as well. If you were to see the earnings and balance sheet and financials of a company, all similar to Palantir, but you didn't know it was Palantir, would you buy that stock?
Well, I think that is a way too simplistic way to look at it. Like if you just look at what the company has done historically, from my investment perspective, you can't really invest in any of them if you don't understand the narrative of the business. Where did those numbers come from? What are those numbers going to look like in the future? If you have like no idea about that, you can't really invest anyway. But yeah, sure. If you just look at a static image, like the way that it's been really popular lately, like, well, Salesforce did this much cash flow, Palantir did this much cash flow for this quarter, and they're worth the same. How is this possible? This is insane. I mean, that's just a way too simplistic way to look at it. And it's not the way that I invest. I invest based on valuation only. And in order to be able to value a business, you need to understand where the revenue is going from. You need to be able to forecast what it's going to look like in the future. And then you need to look like at the whole picture, cash, growth, and risk. And then you bring that to the present, and then you get a valuation for the business. So you can't just look at like, well, I looked at the statement of income or the statement of operations, and this is uninvestable, and this is like investable. Like it doesn't work that way. So I don't know why that's been a trend lately. I think it's to be honest, Palantir has seen some of the most egregious content farming on X, like from any company that I've ever seen. And at this point, it's not really even that creative. They're like reposting the PE ratio or the price to sales ratio like 8 times per week for months.
I get it, but the point I'm trying to make though is that we are commanding one of the craziest multiples in the history of the stock market, right? Yep. And that's my point. Like everything you're saying is correct. Like you need to know about the growth prospects and everything else about the company. But the point is, it is still the most expensive name. Is at least one of the most expensive names ever in history. But the point is, it's Palantir, and that's why it commands the premium, because it is Palantir.
Yeah, look. All that said, I'm not here trying to say that the company is cheap. Definitely not. It's super, super expensive. I'm not going to say that it's even close to fairly valued. Like my fair value for the company is 65 now by some miracle. It actually traded down to 65 a couple of weeks ago, so I bought more. But yeah, I can't bring myself to buy the business at 125, given my understanding of the company today. Now, Palantir has time and time again proven us so wrong on our expectations, definitely from Wall Street expectations. So that's when people start to quote like forward price to sales, forward PE, that's based on off of Wall Street estimates.
Yeah.
And Wall Street has never been correct on Palantir. And I don't expect them to be for a long time to come. Like, they really don't understand this business. So yeah, not cheap, super expensive actually, super overvalued. But I mean, yeah, you can't really get away from that. Like, I haven't seen one credible argument that says that Palantir is like a deal at this
Why
price.
do you?
I don't think anyone has said that. Like, actually, like who has said that?
Why do you think Palantir is getting this multiple? Why is it getting 650 times earnings? Why is it getting 70 times sales or 100 times sales? Like, why, in your opinion?
Okay, so I think the most simple answer is that no one really knows what they're gonna put up. I mean, we said it during the earnings stream. I had expected 48%. Matt, who's unfortunately not here today, he was right on the money with his forecast. The quarter prior, roles were reversed. Like, no one really knows what this company is gonna do. So when there is uncertainty, but they are so well positioned to do so much, I think that's what brings the excitement into the actual stock quote. Like, no one really knows what to expect for real. I mean, at this point, I don't even think Palantir fully understands the opportunity presented and what that might look like for them. Like, how much revenue is there, what are margins going to look like over time? Like, no one really knows. And it's just the most exciting space to be invested in right now, which is AI. And this, as Dan Ives says, this is like at the forefront of AI. So I think that's the reason for the multiple. Like, it's just too unpredictable, especially if you're not as well versed into the company like someone like this chat or me and you might be. Like, from the outside, it is truly a question mark. And I think that's what brings the excitement to the stock name, to be honest. Because like, what other company can just say like, yeah, partnered up with NATO this week, partnered up with like this huge company the other week? Like, people are seeing this and no one can really like extrapolate in their head like, okay, what does this actually mean for the future? So I think that's the core reason. Like, just too many unknowns, but it is the most exciting space and it's the most well-positioned company. So I think that's the combination that created this pricing that we are seeing today.
I 1000% agree. I think the unknowns on what they could do, what numbers they could put up, no one expected 36% growth last quarter, reaccelerated from the lows of 13%. I mean, there's just so much excitement, so much momentum, NATO contracts, Maven, commercial deal. Like, when you put all that together, yeah, it commands a multiple because people are just saying this is one of the pure play AI names in a industry that theoretically will be worth many, many trillions. And if Palantir even captures a small part of that, that's going to be a big deal. One other reason I think it's getting the multiple, and I talked about this morning as well, these are the top stocks traded today by option volume. I've been looking at this for the past couple of days now. Palantir's up there in the top 5 pretty much every day. Palantir, Tesla, NVIDIA tend to be in the top 5. You can take out MicroStrategy, put in Amazon, put in iBit, take out Apple, but Palantir, Tesla, and NVIDIA are in the top 5. And so I think a lot of people that are trading derivatives on Palantir, they don't care what the market cap is implied by 120 or 110. They just care that, can they buy the stock? Can they sell calls against it? Can they buy puts against it? Can they have a trading partner on the other side of that trade willing to give them liquidity to get in and out of that trade? And because of that, it keeps a juicy options market that elevates the premium as well, because you have just so many people coming in and out of the stock. So that, along with everything you're saying about people's excitement around fundamentals, that is my best way. And then you got Karp, right? Like, that all can explain how, because I think a lot of people this week have been saying, how does it get this multiple? And I'm like, I think that's the reason. People just want to be in this name for the long term. And then the fourth part, which is the biggest part, retail's not selling. Retail's diamond handing, you know? And because of that, I think that also keeps it elevated.
Do you know anything about like short interest in this stock?
Yeah,
like
got an update today. The short interest It is 2.5%.
Look, this is the funny part. People are crying every day on X. You have Wall Street analysts going on CNBC saying like this is the most ridiculous thing that they have seen in their career. There's nothing is ever going to be this mispriced in the future. Like this is a scandal. Like for the stock market, it's a shame on the whole industry of equities. And then like shorted 2%. Like what? Like your mouth isn't lining up with your actions. Like no one is shorting this. Why? If this is the most ridiculously valued business you have seen in your careers, like some people have been investing for 40 years and they make all these statements daily, every day, like sometimes multiple times per day, they cry about this stock and you're not shorting. Like why? 2%, Amit. This is nothing. 2%.
I mean, when you have other companies that are shorted at 20 to 30%,
yeah,
and they're not nearly trading at the multiples Palantir. Like I thought shorting was, hey, either a company's a fraud or it's ridiculously overvalued. We know Palantir's not a fraud. You can argue Palantir has a crazy multiple, but if that is not enough to get the shorts excited, they're probably afraid of their Coke dealers.
Yeah.
I mean, like why, you know?
I just think it's a really interesting dynamic here. Like what we're hearing and what we're seeing just doesn't add up. And the question is why? Well, I would never personally short a stock ever, even less so a high quality stock just based on valuation. But I mean that does happen. Like that's their whole trade. Like they short businesses based on valuation and on fraud, as you mentioned. But they're not doing it to Palantir. So I mean, that just adds to the whole mystique of Palantir. Like no one truly knows. They might complain on the sidelines, but they're not willing to put their money where their mouth is. For me personally, like when it is this much overvalued, I mean, I just chill with my shares. I'm not like I've done the mistake of trimming, as we like. Most of my buys were in the single digits. As we moved up, I kept trimming. I've learned that lesson. Like when it is trading this overvalued, I'm not doing anything. Sometimes we will get an opportunity, like some weeks ago when it traded fairly valued at 65 for me. I bought some, and now we're almost double that. So it's a truly unique name in the stock market from that sense.
And the other thing is there hasn't been a single short report published on this name since the bear cave. Like that's kind of crazy, right? You've had a short report on AppLovin, you've had a short report on all these other companies that are, but like, and these are big tech companies as well. But Palantir at these multiples, no short report firms, I'm sure they've tried, can find a red flag in the fundamentals of the business. They can't talk about SPACs anymore. So then the only short thesis you have is valuation. And we've seen this time and time again. Amazon, Tesla, Nvidia. It's hard to just short on valuation because A, companies can grow into valuation. B, valuation does not have to be the only holistic way for why people would buy a stock.
Yeah, and I was gonna say the one time we got a short report that garnered media attention, it was really horrible. Like the guy didn't understand the business. He wrote a short report and sold it based on not even looking at the company himself. Most of it was, well, I know someone that told me, so I just believed him. So that's what I wrote. To be fair to that guy, he did come out and tweet that, I was wrong. It happened. So credit to the guy for actually.
He personally messaged me. Yeah, he personally messaged me like a couple months ago. He was like, "Yeah, you're right." We were supposed to do a stream about it. He was supposed to come on, and we were supposed to, but we never ended up doing it. But it's like the stock proved him wrong, right? Like the company proved him wrong, and no other shorts since then have tried to even attempt to make the argument.
Yeah, and I mean, okay, you mentioned the SPACs. There are some other things I would like to highlight. Maybe we can look at some more charts and actually go through the quarter, like why people are here. I shared a chart on. Wait, I'm gonna share my screen in a second. So, one of the when you look at a quarter for a business, you want to see the core parts of the company doing well. And one of the most important things are, of course, the margins. Like, I think Palantir once again surprised most people, I didn't see anyone expecting 20% operating margins. I was really impressed by that. And why that is so important is because one of the major fears to the stock have been, well, Palantir can't really be profitable. It's all just net income. So when interest rates come down, all of Palantir's profitability will go down the toilet. I mean, they are scaling operating margins beautifully, and that will continue. Like, I am very certain of that. I mean, I have them doing something like closer to 40-45% by the end of this decade rather than 20. So, but if we look at the core argument here, I know you like this chart on Examit, but for the people who don't know, this is the black bar here is interest income. So this is just looking like the composition of Palantir's net income. So you can see this part is just from the operations, like the golden part is, okay, how much did Palantir's core business actually make and how much of the net income is from interest? And as we can see, interest income has been kind of static and the fluctuation is actually from the operations. Now, we can disregard Q4 that had huge stock-based compensation impact. But you see the trend is so clear, like it's just going up and to the right, almost in an exponential manner as they scale their margins. And one of the core arguments to me kind of is dying down as of this quarter when people say, well, once interest rates come down and they can't really just park their cash and be profitable off of their cash, Palantir's profitability will be gone. I mean, like, look at this. Like, no, it won't be. Like, they are scaling margins beautifully. I don't think that that's even an argument to say anymore. I mean, sure, like, why wouldn't they use their 5.4 billion and park them in treasuries while yields are above 4%? Like, just makes perfect sense. If you're not cash constrained in regards to growth, why not just put it to work in treasuries? I mean, I never understood that bear argument.
Yeah, and we might not get rate cuts in the next 3 months anyway, so it might not even matter, you know. But the fact that their operating margins are getting up as much as they are, you expected 18, they came in at 20%. It's not bad, dude. It's
and there are just so many things. Like, as you mentioned, there are not really that many. You can't really highlight anything that's like bad.
Yeah,
of course. International commercial declined. You never want to see revenue declines, but I mean, that metric has been static for like 3-4 years. Like, that metric has done nothing for Palantir. So that's been there. They have addressed it like every earnings call. So I mean, that's not really a surprise, but like just about on every other cylinder, maybe I can share some more stuff that just shows like how impressive this company is. But another big thing for me was this. So this is the average revenue per customer, but we exclude the top 20 because the top 20 customers account for 46% of revenue, so almost half. So if you include those, you will get some very inflated numbers. So by excluding the top 20 customers, you get like a more accurate representation of the average revenue per customer. And for the third time, they actually increased that number, which is like always a really strong how do you call it? It's a sign of strength when you can increase that. And as we just saw earlier on net dollar retention, like current customers are scaling, which is why it's so important that average revenue per customer doesn't just drop off of a cliff, which it has been doing historically, like basically until Q1 of 2024, so a year ago. That's when we started to see 2 up quarters. Like, okay, things are happening now. They are properly monetizing AIP. A lot of interesting stuff is happening in the business. So this stabilizing, even though they are acquiring customers at a much faster pace. Of course, when you dilute your revenue by more customers, it becomes just increasingly harder to keep the average revenue per customer high. So just that they can stabilize instead of just having this continued drop-off is really, really impressive. But what I wanted to look at more is, let's see, not contract balances, which are fantastic as well. Revenue per employee. This is another just beautiful chart. Like, when you look at employee efficiency in the SaaS space, Palantir is untouchable. Like, they barely increase their employee count, but the revenues are scaling just so much. Typically, you will see like that the company really has to expand their human capital in order to capture opportunities that are like in front of them in terms of revenue. To like, well, we need more salespeople to sell more. Well, no, Palantir keeps the same, and the employees are just more and more efficient over time. So this is another one of those like really beautiful charts when you're tracking Palantir. And I haven't done one for this quarter, but we did one last quarter where I gathered all the SaaS names. So CrowdStrike, Salesforce, ServiceNow, all of those companies. I think I did something like 25. I even like went far out of my way to capture as many as possible. Palantir is like just above and beyond everyone. So when people look at something like stock-based compensation and they're like, well, why is SBC so high? Well, first of all, it's not high in the SaaS space. It is high when you compare to something more mature, but in the SaaS space, the average is actually, as a percentage of revenue, the average is actually 24. So Palantir is well below that at 18% for this quarter.
Yep.
And the trend is really clear. Like it stabilized somewhere around that 20, 21, 22% here, but now we've got that drop below 20. And I expect that to continue now that revenue is really, really accelerating. So in the SaaS space, the most efficient employees, and they're not really even overly compensating. I think just the employee force believes in the story. Like 18% in the SaaS space. I know it sounds crazy to hear like 18%, but it's really not crazy.
Dude, Snowflake is 50% of revenues. Is SBC?
I think like, exactly, but I'll take your word for it. Yeah.
It's like 46%. It's a ridiculous number. It makes no sense. It's and that's because they have to compensate a lot of sales people who sell their software in stock. And with Palantir, they barely increased headcount as well. I don't know if you have a chart for that, but I still think it's just under 4,000. If I'm not wrong.
Well, I don't have a chart, but we can have a look. Exactly. I have noted it, of course. So I think I have it here. They increased from the prior quarter 3,936 to 4,001. So that's a 8%, well, 9% year-on-year increase. But I mean, it's just tiny, like about 65 people over the quarter, and revenues increased 39%. So I mean,
that's crazy. Yeah, crazy. By the way, the Snowflake number is 44%. I just checked. So
yeah, but adjacent to that, it's kind of important as an investor to keep in mind like how much SBC expense is outstanding for the company. And of course, when they went public, they had above more than 2 billion outstanding SBC expenses that they had to recognize. And this chart also, like, it's a clear downtrend. We had with the SARS in Q3, like we had a huge bump up. We exercised those, and now we're on the downtrend again. So 1.2 billion of outstanding SBC expenses. We don't know exactly when we're gonna recognize that, but it's also downtrending. So it's not like they are diluting us into oblivion still. I mean, they're clearly making progress. So I know that's another one of those key bear arguments for Palantir. Like, yeah, you're getting diluted into oblivion. I mean, they're clearly making progress on that as well. And if you are going to dilute your shareholders, it better be for the best employee force in the whole SaaS space, which they obviously do have on an employee efficiency basis. So, I mean, I'm kind of running out of bear arguments, and that's kind of scary. You want to have something like tangible on the bear argument side, so you can be like, well, am I delusional, or is just this company just too good? Do you know what I mean? You're kind of like, well, what's negative about Palantir at this point? Like, I want to have something to anchor myself to. How do you think about
I think that's why we've created one of the, the best communities when it comes to stock communities on the planet, because we actually focused on bear cases for years. Like for years, I think all of us were not delusional thinking it's just going to keep going up. It ended up just keep going up. But like we looked at so many bear cases to try to make sure we had our heads in the right place, whether it was sales, distribution, can they actually reaccelerate government growth? A lot of those, as you're saying, I think I said this a couple of days ago, I can't find the red flag. The only red flag that people pointed out to me, which I would agree is a red flag for now is declining international growth, quarter to quarter. But,
yeah, and yeah, it's static. Yeah, and of course the valuation. I mean, do you?
Valuation's aggressive, bro. It's like, but I'm starting to just realize,
of course, but we've never actually said anything else.
It was aggressive at 30. It was aggressive at 30, right? So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's like, if the market wants to pay this premium, either there's going to be this massive 75 to 80% correction. We're going back to 30, 40 bucks. And, you know, and this was just all a dream for 6 months. Or no, maybe we get a haircut to 70, 80 bucks. It stays in that range for a bit, or we normalize triple digits. I think we have a long runway to see what happens, but I just don't think we're going back to 30, 40 bucks as most of the bears say we should.
Yeah, I think the core part, like valuation, is in the context of your expectations, right? So
yeah,
what are you expecting the company to do, and what are you willing to pay for that? And I think we have had our expectations wrong, including like everyone of us. Like,
agreed.
If I told you like when Palantir grew 13%, I was gonna be like, yeah, they're gonna grow 39% year on year, just a year and a half from now. You would have been like, what are you talking about? Because I remember I had that in my valuation sheet. I had something like, I can't recall exactly, but it was like over 40%. And people were like, what are you smoking? They just grew like 13%. Did you mistype 10%? I'm like, no, I mean, so we don't actually know. And that's why it's kind of still fun to track Palantir. I remember during the earnings stream, I said, like, for me, Palantir doesn't require attention anymore. And everyone kind of agreed that we've just studied Palantir for so long that at this point they have reached like the precipice or like the hurdle where they're just executing now on the vision we had for the business like years ago. So we don't really need to track the day-to-day as intensely as we used to do, because this company is just executing on all cylinders, and the story and the narrative we had for the company is just playing out now, which is just like, you know, that rarely happens the way it does with Palantir. Like, I don't know how many people in the chat have been investors for a long time. Like, it is truly rare to see a company you devote so much time into, you have a vision, and then you can just like close your eyes. As Buffett says, like, yeah, you should be able to invest in a company, stock market closes for 10 years, and you don't need to worry about what's going to happen. Like, those are the best kind of investments. And Palantir is truly one of those where I don't even have to worry what they do anymore. I mean, they're just executing, and who knows what the future is going to look like. That's what makes it so exciting. Like, okay, 125, I can't buy it. Most people are probably not buying it. I know you did during earnings.
Yeah.
But I mean, who knows? Maybe 125 is actually cheap. Maybe everyone will be wrong again. We don't know. Like, what if they grow 50% and margins are 50%?
What if they get to 50, 60%, maybe in a year or two, and instead of 10 years of 40, you know, we have 3 years of 50, 5 years of 30, and the latter 5 years of 25. I mean, like, what if that's how it averages out? And the street is just like, you know, Adobe's not growing 60%. Snowflake's not, you know, like, what if this Karp said we're going to take the whole market? They have 800 customers.
And that's just one part. What about margins? Like, okay, let's do this. Since we are alone, we can play around a bit. Let's just see what's implied. Like, let's do a quick reverse DCF. So if Palantir grows at 40% for the next 10 years at 40% margins, it is worth 125. Now, growing at 40% for 10 years, that's pretty high expectation of the company, right? I mean, most people would say that. Okay, let's say that they grow 30%, but instead the margins are 50. Okay, then it's worth 80. What if they grow at 60% free cash flow margins? Okay, then it's worth 100, even with only 30% growth. Now, most people would expect more than 30%. What if it's 35? Okay, the company is worth 133. So, you know, just small changes in the expectations just changes what the company is worth today, like, massively. So I think just the unknown is what is driving this stock quote. And I mean, I'm not one to question it anymore. I've been wrong so many times. Like, they have exceeded my expectations time and time again. So yeah, in terms of can I buy it? No, based on my understanding, but I wouldn't say that 120 is completely out of this world insane, the worst thing to happen in the stock market since the Great Depression, like stuff like that we're seeing. Like we just don't know. They might hit that. Like it's not
so two
impossible.
things. The fact that they got to 125 in February, everyone thought it was a fluke because the market crashed. And now the market's not at all-time highs, but Palantir got right back to all-time highs and exceeded all-time highs. Is kind of insane. I mean, it just means the level of excitement and liquidity, most importantly, that the market has, whether it's retail or institutional investors, are there to support Palantir. Second, there was a clip today on CNBC. Some random guy said he sold Google, bought Palantir. I don't really think this guy understands Palantir the way you and I understand Palantir, the way that understands Palantir. But he doesn't care. He was like AI, data, analytics. But like the guy doesn't give it. He was like, I know the valuation's aggressive, but you know, I want exposure to AI. Like if there's hundreds of thousands of those types of money managers across the world that are allocating, you know, billions and billions of dollars, and that would be at least in the hundreds of billions of dollars when you aggregate it. That's a lot of money as a percentage that's going into Palantir that truly doesn't care about anything multiple wise. They just care about the story, the narrative, and the acceleration of growth. And then you've got S&P 500 and NASDAQ bi-weekly inflows coming in from retirement accounts that are just buying up the major indices, and a portion of that is buying up Palantir stock.
Yeah, I don't even want to mention like money market funds, like how much is still on the sidelines compared to historical averages. But, you know, that's truly, you know, it's not the way I invest. I want to preface this by saying this is not the way I invest. But more and more, it is becoming common to invest solely based on the narrative. And when you think about it, they're not really like, on one hand, I can't name you 5 companies with as bright of a narrative as Palantir. Palantir could perhaps be the company in the US equity markets right now that has the best narrative. Like what other company has like a brighter expected future than Palantir right now? I can't think of one. Like, of course, there are many high quality businesses. Robinhood executing so well, growing so massively, but is their narrative as good as Palantir's? Like, no, they do have their own shortfalls and their own risks. But just Palantir, like the narrative is just too good. And I think that's a new, from what I'm seeing, that's a new modern way approach to investing, is just like based solely on the narrative, where you kind of disregard some of the numbers. So that could also be what we're seeing right now, because when you talk to Palantir investors, like the hyperbulls, of course, when you're part of the Palantir communities, I was criticized so much, like, oh, you just bury your head in a spreadsheet, you just look at the numbers, you will never get Palantir. I'm like, well, I did get Palantir. I do have a lot of shares, so I don't know what you mean. But like the core idea is that they don't even try. They're like, no, this company is going to dominate, and that's all they care about. So they keep buying more shares. And I think that's becoming a more and more common way of investing, where you just disregard numbers. Now, I'm not saying I'm investing that way. I really don't. I really care about the numbers. But when you look around you, that's a trend that I'm seeing. Like you have a better temperature. Like, do you think people care so much about numbers these days as they might have done like 10 years ago? It just feels like narrative is everything these days in the stock market.
I don't think anyone gives a shit, dude. I mean, like some people care, but the vast majority of people think, oh, $100. I mean, why do you think people were buying Palantir at 40, 50? It's because like it's $40, $50, whatever. Like Meta's at 500. It's hard to buy one share of Meta. Palantir, oh, I can get 10 shares for 400. Like, and no one knows what $40 implied, which at the time was freaking 110 billion. And you and me were like, dude, 110 billion, you know, barely, you know. But
remember
like,
how we celebrated 100 billion? We're like, oh my god.
Now everyone's. I think that's what made the community so unique, because this community was not built off GameStop apes that were just going to buy it for the hell of it. I think that was a very small part of the community, but the stock ended up kind of acting like it didn't matter with all the due diligence we did, all the valuations, the spreadsheets, all the analysis, because once it ran, it fully ran and it didn't really give up its run. But I think what made the community unique is that we understood, at least to an extent, what we were investing in, why it was running, and we were able to be objective about the valuation. It's just in this context, the valuation did not have as big of a role as we thought it would be. And that happens sometimes, but The point is now we can also understand why the growth is accelerating and try to make sense if it can solidify that valuation long term as well.
Yeah, do you have any highlights from the quarter? Like,
yeah, I was gonna pull this up. So this is a clip of Karp talking about Europe and why they need to get their act together and kind of how they're going to scale internationally as well. So let's react to this.
Of if the institutions are in pressure, either we go through a difficult time in America or there's Doge, how will that affect your software sales, basically? And Palantir does exceptionally well when things are pen tested. We like pressure on the system. We need pressure on the system. And then why is it better for America? Because that pen testing forces you to ask questions like, does the software work? How does it work? How does it manage ethical concerns? How does it manage data protection? How does it manage output? Without pressure on the system, one of the myths is that if you don't have pressure on the system, you just spend money, you somehow get a better system, both in terms of output, in terms of ethics, but actually you get neither. And so in reality, we need pressure on the system. We need people to have to change. We need people to have to transform. This is why they put up with us. And once they see those results, they stick with us.
Thank you both. Our next question.
I mean, it was pretty incredible, the argument here about him explaining why government growth is so important, how government growth is going to be battle tested when it comes to, the type of software you get. And then he further went on to make his point when he was answering Mariana's question as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is him just about Europe. Yeah.
Doesn't get AI yet.
It obviously do a lot to help you.
Look, Europe doesn't get AI yet. It at some point in the future it will. And then, as you know, Europe is not Europe. You have Eastern Europe, you have Germany, France, you have they're very different Europes. Europe that is scared understands that you're going to have to do software, hardware, hybrid systems, and our products are very, very well known and differentiated. It could take a couple years for Europe to understand that you just can't spend money. You're going to have to spend it on things that actually work, and work means spending it on people that have actually done this on the battlefield. I would say our plan is to continue to be roughly in the zone where 90% of our business is growing like it is now at 49% with this rule of 83, and somewhere in that range we guided to rule of 80. And that's going to be primarily driven by the US. I would say as a unknown variable, we're seeing very significant demand for our software, our government software around the world outside of Europe. And those are early days, but the demand, the signal there is very strong.
So reaction to the idea that there are other parts of the world that are inquisitive of Palantir software outside of Europe, and then ultimately, Amir, do you think Europe is coming in the next few quarters?
Timing when they're coming is difficult to know, but he mentioned something interesting. So he differentiates between the different parts of Europe, right? So when he says scared Europe, he means in the military context, of course. And we already saw the NATO deal. We know that they've been helping out in Ukraine for the longest time, which, I mean, this whole battle tested idea is just so genius. Like, even if they offer their software for free, just like being able to show their products like on the front lines pays off later. Like, that's an investment worth making. But the core part here that he's trying to say is that, yeah, Europe will come around sooner or later. And most significantly, that is not only because of the threat of war, for example, with Russia or something like that. I think it's simply because the economies are imploding. And the best way and the quickest way to get more efficient, to create more profits, is AI. And what better company than Palantir? So sooner or later, Europe will have to embrace AI. They will have to get rid of the several years worth of hurdles. Like, it's the most regulated place on earth. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there is a meme like China came out with DeepSeek, the US came out with like OpenAI, Grok, all of these models, and then Europe, it's like the attached plastic bottle cap. Like, that's the innovation that we're seeing in Europe. So yeah, I mean, it is getting ridiculous. The economies are imploding. It's really not growing. So it will come around. If it's within the next quarters, I couldn't tell you.
I don't think it's that soon. I think it's the next 2
No,
years.
I mean, this is a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Europe is very cultural, and just changing everything on its head. I mean, this is basically the EU Commission has decided most of these things, most of these regulations, most of these policies. They won't simply turn around. I think Trump is really, and Vance specifically, is really putting pressure on Europe. They're like, well, okay, enjoy your 0.8% of GDP growth. We're gonna enjoy this 4%. You know, well, what did US grow in 2024? Like 3.8.
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, yeah, I mean, it's gonna come around when I don't know, but the key part here, as a Palantir investor, is that they're clearly showing they're not dependent on Europe to do well. I mean, the US is scaling immensely. Even on the international stage, we're seeing huge, unprecedented deals in South Korea with HD Hyundai. They're doing a lot of stuff in Japan. I mean, they are expanding everywhere else. I mean, they're not reliant on Europe, so they can afford to wait. And when Europe also hits, I think it's going to be even more aggressive in terms of growth when Europe finally comes around. But Palantir doesn't have to wait around. That's not like a... For some companies, there is like a bull case. They're like, well, this is gonna happen. We don't know when, so we just have to sit tight and pray. Like, no, that's not the case for Palantir. They don't care. They a year ago, I don't know if you recall this interview, Karp, when I can't remember the exact context, but he said, yeah, Europe is not playing ball. We are pulling back our employees from Europe and sending them back to the US. Like, he said that openly, like, yeah, why am I gonna keep full-time employees in Europe when Europe doesn't want to play ball? Sure, fine. We bring them back to the US and actually grow where we can grow. So yeah, they don't, it's not like a stopper for the core business at all. Like, when it comes around, it will be a huge bonus. And where the huge deals are is in the military context. And as he said, those are coming around now. Like, they don't have to wait for those. Like, that's happening now. NATO is happening now. So yeah, European commercial, a shame. It will come around sooner or later, but as an investor, I'm not too worried. I'm not sitting around waiting for that. There are too many exciting things happening for the company elsewhere.
I like that he mentioned that other governments across the world outside of Europe are starting to ask about their software offerings. I mean, Middle East, Asia, there's a lot of parts of the world besides Europe that have plenty of capital that need to deploy and understand how to navigate AI. And one thing we've seen in the UK, once Palantir gets in with the government, it's a lot more easier for them to scale into the commercial sector. One of the best examples I remember of this is they got a $75 million contract with the Ministry of Defense in the UK, December 2022. And a couple of months later, or a year later, they get a big contract with Babcock, which is one of the biggest defense contractors inside of the UK. And like, it's all synergistic. I mean, that's what we were so attracted to back in 2022. It's like we just thought their software would be everywhere, and still they only have 800 customers, less than that. And so the trajectory of growth really is to the point where I think the company themselves feels they can get to the many trillions of dollars of market cap. It's just they've got to be able to sustain that growth for a long time.
So just looking at we can look at all the, just tying back to what we were talking about. So overall, net addition of customers was 58. Of course, it's not as strong as Q4, which was really like we went from 39, 36, and then like boom, 82. So Q4 was really an outlier, and who knows, next quarter might be as well. But 58 is still very solid with the historical context. It is the all-time high if we exclude Q4. But when you look at like, okay, where did that come from? So government customers, we actually have the all-time high net addition of government customers with 7. Now, I don't have it broken out the way I did in the other chart, but as you can see, there isn't a lot happening in government customers. It's basically pretty flat for periods of time. It's slowly moving. So to see a jump of like 7 quarter over quarter, like it's just huge. And even the quarter prior, 131 to 140, an addition of 9. So it's really starting to become interesting in the government space. So I actually believe Karp when he says that, yeah, government agencies around the world are really coming around. And that ties back to the whole argument that they actually are battle tested.
Yeah.
What other software is battle tested to this degree? Like no one. So all of that, when people are like skeptic, like, okay, why are you giving this for free to Ukraine? I'm like, yeah, here you go. This is why. Like the credibility, yeah, it's just so strong. And then when you look at overall customers and you tie it back to net dollar retention and see, okay, when they get a customer, are those scaling? Yeah, they're scaling aggressively, like 24% just from existing customers. I expect that to go up even more next quarter. So yeah, just like increasing the pace of acquiring customers, increasing how you scale your current customers. I mean, it's just a beautiful dynamic and really exciting as a Palantir shareholder to see. So, to be honest, overall, I can't really find anything overly negative about this quarter. Like as a whole, I've been looking at it. There's nothing that really stands out as a red flag at all to me. Like that I was not.
And that matters coming from us because I think we are pretty objective about.
Yeah, I've been called like a bear so many times coming on this show. I'm like, okay, I mean, I'm not a bear. I'm a huge shareholder, but I'm gonna call it out as I see it. And then I just go through everything. I look at contract balances, sales efficiency, profitability, like everything, and I'm like, I'm not seeing anything that's alarming. I mean, it's quite the opposite. I'm super impressed by a lot of things this quarter, and really exciting times to be a shareholder here. Like, do you have just anything like besides international commercial? I mean, nothing.
Look, here's what I said this on the market close today. I think this is kind of how this thing is playing out. We all got into Palantir at like 10, 15, 20 bucks, right? In 2021, 2022. Yep. We would have been very happy by 2030 if that $10 that we paid turned into $125 over the course of about 9 years, right? And we would celebrate 30 and 40 and 50 and
ecstatic. I would have been like, yeah, I got the generational stock pick correctly.
That shit happened in 2 years. And it happened realistically from 6, more so, because that's when people really like decided to say, all right, let's take a chance on Palantir. So I think what could happen, there's 2 scenarios. There's 3. Either this 125 is ridiculous and we fall back to like 50, 60, right? That's one possibility. And like we're not going to see that for a while. That's one possibility. Number 2 is we stay flat for the next 5 years, which means this 120 doesn't go to 520 like people are saying. And your $20 average, in 2030, you'll be really happy if Palantir is still 120 and you have a $20 average. You've done very well on a compounded annual growth rate over the course of a decade. But it's going to be a flat 5 years because you got all the excitement, all the dopamine in a year and a half versus celebrating every $10 milestone because it took like 2 months every $10 in 2024 to get to a new milestone. The other route is this is going to 500. This 120 is just the beginning of one of the best runs in the history of the stock market that we've ever seen. I think we're somewhere more in the middle of maybe it doesn't go to 500. The reason I'm saying 500 is $1 trillion. Maybe it doesn't stay flat at 120. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. But I would not be surprised to see the stock kind of trade in a range over the next couple of years because we've pulled forward so much growth that would probably be healthy to allow it to grow into the valuation. Or Palantir puts up NVIDIA level growth and we get to 200, 300, which probably will still be a crazy valuation, but it's not going to matter if they're growing 60, 70%.
I think okay, let's take them one by one. So the first one, going back to 50, I think 50 is actually undervalued. So I don't personally see like the 50, 60s. It might be a compromise, something like the 80, 90s makes sense. But like 56 is just undervalued. Like it's just too cheap for a company like Palantir. The second one is that it stays flat for 5 years. Also likely not going to happen because just the pace of the industry that they operate in is just moving too quickly that 5 years, it won't be stagnant for 5 years. It won't be stagnant for 1 year. Like it's just so much happening and they are at the forefront. So regardless, I don't think the stock will be flat. Like it might move up or down. It might be really volatile, but flat is not what I'm expecting in an industry that is like redefining the way that we exist on Earth. Like this, it's that massive. And it's just like now that we are like AI is not new. It is new in the in the context of how it changes our day-to-day lives, and we haven't even started that. Like that is just starting to be a conversation, like in 2025. Like, okay, how will AI change our lives? Imagine 5 years from now. So that's why I don't think it's gonna stay static. And the third one, it's going to run to 500. Well, I don't know. Maybe it will. I can't make that argument because I think even 125 is expensive or overvalued. But who knows? Like that's the exciting part about being a shareholder. If everyone knew, wouldn't be much of a stock market. We would have a static quotes for years if everyone was on the same page and everyone knew. So I think the first two unlikely. But the question is then, where will the volatility bring us? I'm sure we're gonna trade below 100 sometime again. I'm sure we're gonna get close to 200 as well, like maybe even like months apart, like below 100 and then to 200. Like we've seen something similar with Tesla. It went down close to $100 per share. Like a couple of months later, it was at all-time highs again, like over 400. Yeah. I mean, who the hell knows, you know? I just like, just have your own personal strategy clear. I have mine. I'm not even looking at Palantir unless it's undervalued. Then I might be buying more. Otherwise, do nothing. So that's my personal strategy. You should have one and be ready for like, okay, what will you do if it goes to 300? Are you gonna sell, or are you gonna buy more if it goes to 50? Like, as long as you have your own personal strategy set, then you don't really have to worry too much about every different scenario that's going to be thrown at you, because this will be a volatile stock for a long time to come. Like, who knows?
Yeah. And look, we've spent the most amount of time we've ever spent as a company in the triple digits over the past couple of weeks. If a couple months go by, we're still triple digits. I mean, it might be forming a serious base at that level, irrespective of all the valuation concerns that people have. And that could be one of the reasons it's elevated. But like you said as well, it's priced for perfection. Anything bad happens in the macro, it could fall below 100 easily, right? It's just long-term. Do we think this is going to be worth a lot more than what it is today? I think most of us see that bull case. And, you know, as a result, I think a lot of people continue to hold their shares.
Yeah, look, the initial run up to like the over hundreds, like last year, we were talking about this on Weekly. And then we look at each other and we say, like, this company hasn't had a negative catalyst for like a year straight. Like, what's going to bring the stock price down? Yeah. Like they just keep improving, they keep executing. Like there's nothing negative to attach yourself to. Like, this company just has no negative catalyst. So that will come sooner or later. It might present a huge opportunity. I'm personally hoping so. When it went to 65, I was like, dude, dear Lord, give me 30. Like, you know. So just be ready if you're interested in acquiring more. Some people use DCA. I don't personally, but I mean, just have your strategy set and you'll be fine.
But also, again, there's, 500 people on a Friday night or a Friday morning, wherever you are in the world, or Saturday morning,
6 a.m. now.
6 a.m. watching two guys talk about Palantir. I mean, like, that is also part of the reason why this stock is where it is, why the media cares about that. That's why we didn't even talk about that. The media excitement on Palantir. 2017, it was the most evil company in the world. Now it's like they want as many people to talk about it as they can get, because they just see the excitement that's out there. They see that retail caught it before Wall Street, and that in and of itself could be something that elevates the stock over the coming decade as well. So, all right, good stuff. Thank you everybody for being here. It was a pod with just me and Amir today. Amir's YouTube, I'm putting in the chat. If you are not following him yet and you're on my channel, please make sure you're subscribed. He just put out an hour-long video on Palantir earnings. So if you want even deeper analysis on the numbers, you can go to his channel and check that out. And we'll be back next Friday.
Yeah, just a quick anecdote. It was so funny. We were criticizing during the earnings stream. We were making fun of all the analysts who got Palantir wrong and how they're now starting to adjust their price targets. One of the infamous ones is from William Blair, that had like a defense background, like he's a defense expert, and he.
You're talking about Louis De Palma?
Yeah,
I think I know. He raised his target, didn't he?
I don't know what he has done, but we have been very critical of him. He used to have like a single-digit price target, while everyone just like, okay, we got this wrong, we move on. And then he removed his price target completely because I think he got so much criticism. After the earnings stream on Monday, I get a notification on LinkedIn. An equity analyst from William Blair has visited my page. I'm like, Louis, is that you? Reach out, Louis. We can talk Palantir. I'm gonna teach you about Palantir. So feel free to reach out. Don't be shy, Louis. You're welcome with me.
By the way, he was on Yahoo Finance, and the title was "Palantir stock is not cheap, but you are paying for quality." I don't know his actual price target, but he's at least
coming
admitting.
around. They're coming around.
He's admitting that, hey, you're paying for something real. So there you go.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Please make sure to check out Amir. Louis, if you're watching, you got to watch
Louis,
some of Amir's videos.
Reach out, Louis, and everyone else. We're waiting. Morgan Stanley, come on.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week on Palantir Weekly. Bye, everyone.